For the policy meeting, February 7th, noting all members are here. Um, First order is to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right. I did not receive any public comments, so we'll move right into, we have some follow-up policies from the January meeting.
All right, so starting off with those were ones from the January board meeting where fortunately I wasn't able to attend to that meeting, and between Rebecca and I, we've tried to connect what we think the question was. And what I've deduced it down to, and I guess I'm looking for clarity from this group, was really looking at the policy which was related to student searches. And I think the question that, and I believe Mark brought it up, was with regards to if you do a search and you don't find anything, should you still be contacting parents to let you know that you conducted a search? So I think that was the question, at least from what I've understood. I think you and I talked a little bit about that, Ted, when we went through these. I don't think we have any issue with that. We do have to discern kind of what that is. I mean, we're looking at that as probably more of like a personal search, because there are times when we may be looking in a series of lockers for something that may or not be specific, and it's that's not necessarily what I would consider something that's you're bringing somebody in, emptying your pockets, going through your book bag, those type of things. But we felt that in that situation, certainly that's not a problem for us to contact people that we do that. But I wanted to make sure that that was, before I started writing language to it, which I think is just a pretty easy statement, I wanted to check with this group to see if I'm on the right track. Is that kind of what the concern was in the question?
I don't recall if it was exactly, I think that's what it was,
Yeah.
or if it's, do parents need to be notified ahead of a search, or is that, I think it was more so what Randy stated, where I'm the parent, my child was searched and I wasn't even notified.
Right.
You know, the concern in that there was no language to that.
Right.
But I think my child was searched is different than my child was part of a locker search.
Right, yeah, and that's, I mean, we talked through that, so if we ever did like a. Sometimes you'll get someone who'll say like, hey, I saw something at these 5 lockers. You might go open the lockers and see if there was something, but that's not necessarily one where it's like, I'm pulling you out and having you empty your pockets and such, that's just. And then there's times we run the dogs through, and they do a sniff test of all the lockers. And then we always announce after the fact that we did it, and then anybody's locker who was hit or anybody, then those folks are notified. So that's part of our process anyway. But I think the way I would write this would be more specific to if an individual student or their possessions on them were searched, they're brought into the office, you're asked to empty your pockets, those type of things. Then regardless if we found anything, we would contact parents. So I talked to some of our admin, they didn't see any real big issue with that. I think many of them do it anyway, because they're kind of part of just an investigation and were brought into the office or something like that. But I think that's, from what I've deduced, that was what the concern was, and if that's the case,
that way.
that's fine.
I would go that way, you know, I don't think you want to warn the parents that you're going to search the kid, because you don't, one, you probably don't know if you're, and two, if you're doing a search, there's something there that you assume is there. And by the time you notify the parents, they notify their kid, the item's gone.
What about generally saying that we had a general sweep of dogs today and Annie put something out or whatever?
We usually do that when the dogs run through. That's usually enough of a process. You're actually locking down the school, or you're going to put a hold on the school when you do it. So it's often a matter of doing that and letting people know what's going on.
This is routine.
Yeah, we do it. Yeah, we don't do that as often as maybe we prefer to. It's just a hard piece with the number of canines it takes to do that, and they usually do it in groups of law enforcement from all of the regional area, and then they'll get together and they'll, over the course of a few weeks, we'll scan a bunch of schools.
And remind me, is there a difference then between, there is a difference between school officials, administration doing a search and the SRO? And if that, it gets to that point, is there a different level of notification or is there different rights that the student has that?
Can be, certainly, if there's a piece where, if, let's just say if we ran the dogs through and the dogs wanna hit my locker. If an administrator is, for police to go into that locker, they need more cost. For us, it's a pretty low bar, so as long as we are there and present, we can open that locker, we own that locker, it's a school district property, we can go into it and search the contents of it. Now, if there was something found in there, now you have obviously school administration there, we're gonna bring in law enforcement into that discussion. Then that's where parents are also gonna be contacted. That's part of another policy on police involvement, SRO, et cetera.
Well,
So
I'm
if it's-
satisfied with them.
So with that, I guess what I would ask is, I'll just bring this back to the full board. I think there's already been action from the committee here. So I'll make that clarification and then we'll explain it at the board level and I'll do that. The next policies are the ones on expulsion. These are ones that I think we paused on before because I had a question. And what I think really occurred here was, as Rebecca and I dove into it, we had the most recent policy posted correctly on our website. And then we had an older policy kind of in our folder of policies that we were pulling from. So as we were reading through them, it just wasn't driving up. So I think we have them correct now. So there's actually two policies here. We're not doing the PRG version. We're going to keep the versions, our old version. So 447.4 is just talking about student expulsions. We rewrote this several years ago to make sure that it was in line with having an independent hearing officer and outlining our process. The only pieces that I added to it were that the board does have the ability to do an early reinstatement condition. And then we have a separate policy that talks about what that looks like. And then also just the basic non-discrimination statement that you've seen throughout a lot of policies. And then we've looked at the cross-reference list and updated that. So for that policy, it's really not changing because we rewrote it a few years ago. But we are adding that we are able to go down the route of an early reinstatement. And then we have the rule that's associated with that policy, 447.4 rule. This is our early reinstatement policy. The only change we have is about 2/3 of the way down in the front page, there was a typo. Under number 2, it said provided the student, and should be provide the student with an opportunity to present his explanation. And then again, we added the non-discrimination language at the end and the cross references. So I'm happy with how we kind of managed through this one. There was just a few questions as we had some discrepancies as far as which policy we were looking at.
Can you pause a second, can you scroll up just a little? Was there something on the student suspensions up here?
I think what happened was, this is my take on that one, Ted, was that there was one policy, there was a discussion about one policy and then one policy was pulled. And I think that the conversation, it may have been the wrong number pulled. That's what I was gathering.
Okay,
Was that we pulled one of them for action, we approved the other one, but the question on the item that we approved one of the policies, which is the one we actually had a question. So I just brought both of them back and I'll
Yeah,
bring
I
them
was a
both
little
forward.
confused with what I was looking
I
at.
don't think there was a question on the suspended one, it was really on the search. But I think the way that which ones were acted on at the board level, I just think it's best to bring them
I
both
just saw
back.
that.
And is it numbered differently for suspension and expulsion? They're two
Yeah,
separate.
we broke them apart.
okay.
So yeah, PRG had them, Judy, as one policy, and we felt that was confusing,
Yeah.
so we broke it. Yep, thank you, Ted, for that clarification. So, any questions on student expulsion pieces? All right. So now we're moving into all of the new pieces here. The first one here is use of automated external defibrillators. There's a number of these that are falling under our kind of nursing care. So our nurses and our student services staff have taken a look at those. And you can see just a few references of places where we've really made changes just as far as who is the contact person. But we feel comfortable with the use of the defibrillators, the 453.11. Then we also have an associated rule along with that.
Do those devices have to be updated or charged or?
They do, I think they get tested like annually. There are some things that we do check on them, I
Okay.
believe. Correct. But we do have those in all of our buildings. We have one out here. You'll see them out at our athletic events.
And only one per building?
There's generally one, I think, at most of our buildings. Some of our larger buildings may have two. And then we have them that we have some portable ones that go out to like the external fields. And then there are some at some of our other athletic events. Some of those event spaces have them. Places where we're going to either have situations with a lot of guests coming into our school, or we have had situations, or there have been certainly in the area ones with students who are participating who needed the use of an AED.
Okay.
All right. 453.1 is just a definition and the description of emergency nursing services. So this is really what so the policy, we are adopting the PRG, the rule, we are keeping our own rule. So the first policy is just really the definition and talking about emergency nursing services. This is really what our nurses do, how they support some of our highest need students. And then the rule is just going through and talking more specifically about what some of those situations are. Questions on those?
No.
All right. The next one is immunizations. And as you see, this one has a lot of references to state law. And those are pieces that are, we need to be in compliant with student immunizations for school. Every year we have to sign off on compliance of immunizations. If one of the conversations that we had when with Ted as we went through this was with regards to if you have a student or a family who either doesn't believe in the vaccination process or has other medical reasons that they can't take a vaccine, how does that play forward? And there is actually a waiver form that someone can sign, and then that keeps you in compliance. But you either have to have the waiver or the immunizations. So those are pieces that we have to do, and our nurses are diligent about that every fall.
See that increasing, people getting waivers.
Guess I really haven't. I don't really know. I think obviously you had the whole conversation around the COVID piece, but I haven't heard it necessarily come from my nurses on other stances. It's a good question. I can ask them.
Have the vaccinations changed as to what's required
No,
since COVID and now?
No.
So.
no. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all state law. So, or those are, and so none of that has changed.
Is there any treatment that's different, which there shouldn't be, to the student if they did have that waiver and it's signed, like there's no?
And most people don't know that. It's just the nurses. It's really a compliance piece that we have to do. Right. And if you don't hit the compliance, then there's some things that you just are going through with the state. It's a piece they work very hard on. All right, the next item is communicable diseases and how we address them. The PRG had this as, let me look, there's the communicable disease policy, then there's the rule. So this is just again, kind of articulating what our responsibilities are with like public health. See a lot of references, legal references to what's required of us. And particularly our nursing services with regards to communicable diseases and any reporting necessary for that. That's just the general first policy. We are looking at adopting the PRG version of that. And then for the rule, the PRG actually dropped students and staff together. And we decided we thought that would be better split apart. It just reads better. There's certainly just some different nuances with students and working with kids in school versus kind of your staff and some of the HR aspects of it. So we just broke those two policies in half. You'll see in your draft that they're both policies look identical, and all we've done is struck out different language because they had them combined. So we have had our team take a look at those, and we're comfortable with the direction that is in there and the processes that we have.
In your note in the spreadsheet, it says facility to approve or to review, you just make faculty to review. So
Yeah.
that's-
Lisa, Brian. And John did say he looked at it last week.
All right, so those are a lot of info there, but that's really just kind of laying out all the processes we have and responsibilities with regards to communicable diseases and how we handle those.
So when it comes to communicable diseases, again, coming back to COVID, we're covered that we've got to follow. Like Dayton County.
I think this is really more. Yeah, this doesn't probably this is talking more about what's statutorily required with regards to communicable diseases. So if you have someone with whooping cough, you have to report it. Some of those type of things. It's kind of getting back to those processes. If somebody is ill with some of these, how do you stay home? Some of those parts, but I don't have anything in there that says if there's a kind of the COVID dialogue around the orders have a legal teeth to them. Versus needing to really, I think, be articulated by policy, because public health has power as an organization. I think that's why we have the reporting requirements by statute to go back. And so I would probably just stay with what the current law is right now and just articulate it as communicable diseases. And not get more specific what's required by the statutes. The next two we actually pulled out. We had one on specifically AIDS, HIV, CMV, and we had a rule around that as well. This is one that it's just an old policy. I mean, it goes back to the time when there were specific requirements for things around AIDS and HIV, when that disease was not as well known as far as what it was. Right now, we feel that that's covered under our other policies. We don't need to have something that specifically calls out HIV. So our recommendation is to repeal those. All right. Moving on to 453.4. With regards to administration of medications, and then the associated rule. And then we have an exhibit that goes along with that. These have been reviewed by our nursing staff and our student services staff. A very important policy for us as we do handle a number of medications in each of our schools, and having the policy along with the procedures we feel is extremely important, along with the medical consent forms that are utilized. We feel we might as well keep those in there as an exhibit, as just an additional place where those can be found. But I think from our perspective, as we've reviewed this in depth, we feel comfortable with the PRG version, and we've reviewed it per our practice.
Prescription medication, what the kids take themselves, there's no restriction as to them carrying it on their persons.
I, 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 think ideally we're wanting those in the. Do they have that? Self-administered by the student.
I request that the student be able to carry and self-administer this medication independently.
Right, I mean, that could be things like an inhaler, those type of things. I can think about that for a second, Judy.
Yeah,
But certainly those are some of those type of items. Any questions on the medication piece? There's a lot there, and there's a lot of pieces that are specifically legal, and there's also pieces that are procedural, but our staff have taken a look at these and they are in line with what they are, and it's an area that we're quite diligent about. I've-
There, like on the first, is there? It does specifically say inhaler or epinephrine. Contained in an author, like it's specific, specifies those two things. Are there other ones that? Or the like, like you put in there? I don't-
Oh, that's.
It just mentions those.
I think you
Two.
can't be too specific in policy, can you? Name.
Well, that's what I mean. It's
Yeah.
naming those two out. And only
The
those
epinephrine,
two.
that's the EpiPen. And
Yeah.
then the,
I don't know if there's any others that.
I don't know of any other ones. Those are the ones that
Yeah,
that jump to mind most specifically.
I just think of kids, taking Adderall and that kind of stuff. If
No, that's all in the office. That
they,
needs to
they
be-
can't carry that.
No.
Okay.
Some of them, maybe. Have, is the one that you just
This
was.
is the newest one. So this is 453.5.
Some of the ones, Lisa wanted me to pull, so I'm thinking those. might
Like
be-
this, okay. Oh, that's that one. So that they don't even
Yeah.
have that.
Right,
All right.
I have it, but we're not going.
Yeah, 453.5 is
Yeah.
one you shouldn't have in there, but that's, all right, thank you. All right. 454 is reporting of child abuse and neglect. And then also the associated rule that goes along with that. Any of us who work in schools are mandatory reporters, so there are rules, laws, and provisions for what we have to follow. So this has been reviewed by our student services staff, our social workers. With that in mind, this falls in line, so adopting the PRG version is our recommendation, and it stays within the lines of what our process is.
Just looking at, when we adopt the PRG one.
Yep.
And it has the whole history of adoption revisions and things like that.
Yep.
That's related to that policy. It doesn't really know when, as a district, we put it in place, right? Is
the
that,
adoption date usually is.
The adoption date is usually our dates.
oh, it just has. It doesn't have that in like, you update then is what I'm saying. Okay, got it.
So I'll
It's
look
not
at the,
updated out, so when they come in, they've been updated to, I got it, correct.
before I post them, I make sure I have that, I pull that all together.
Yeah.
Actually, don't make it on the graphs.
Someone who looks in the future will know we did this whole book in 2023 and 2024, because that'll be all the adoption dates. The new adoption. dates.
Well, the revised, yeah,
Right.
we have adoption dates, we have revised.
Yeah.
Um, The next one is 455.1. This is one that there is not a suggestion from School Board Association's PRG. He either said review it, revise it, or delete it. As we discussed it, supervision of students is just a core function of schools. It's part of our job descriptions, it's part of what we do in school. So our view is that we do not need to, we don't need this policy, so our recommendation would be to repeal it.
What about the idea that the bus driver is responsible for this?
There's a separate bus policy that doesn't deal with this. This isn't the only thing that deals with bus. There's a whole nother bus policy that's still yet to become.
So, okay,
And
so
that
that
addresses that.
is the bus driver responsible for supervision
Generally, yes. And then there's,
in a loose sense?
yeah, they're responsible on there, and then there's a reporting mechanism that goes to the building principal. Right, if there's any issues there. But this policy doesn't, it references the bus procedures, but it's not, I don't believe we need a policy that just states that we should supervise kids. That's
Okay.
part of what I believe is our, kind of our core mission
Job
while we're at
description.
school, and it's part of our job descriptions. The next one is with regards to student automobile use. And this is one that I know Steve reviewed. And we feel that to keep the current policy as was recommended by Barry from WCSD. Then parking and parking permits. This is one that, again, I believe Steve reviewed with the high school administration. They made a few changes to it in that we really don't have parking passes or parking in any place but the high school. Everything else is general parking. And then they just changed that with regards to towing of vehicles, they changed from shall, that meaning it will happen, to it may be something that could be utilized.
Hey, just coming back to that, can they bring snowmobiles to school? I thought they used to.
Yeah, I believe that there's a I just, yeah, we actually did pass.
Day or something.
Yeah, we do allow that at different times. Yeah, there was actually a point where we had a snowmobile trail through school grounds. Not sure if that's still there. I'm assuming it is. I just met the young man who brought that to the board met Chad Landis a few weeks ago at an FFA event, and he reminded me about his snowmobile process. He was in front of you. Remember that? I think Jack, when he came and brought that forward. But I don't think we've seen that recently that I've seen. Well, we haven't had the snow for it either, but I haven't seen the snowmobile push. That's usually something that they work out with administration, but we did approve it from the board's level. And I don't think we ever.
Yeah.
I don't
But
think we
here
ever
you say
included
use
it.
of go-karts, mini bikes, motorcycles, and similar vehicles.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
you look at the stones,
sure.
you know, that could be. You know, like a go-kart. or-
Sure. I'll look into that one. I don't remember what we do for the snowmobiles.
And then we get the, take your tractor to dig.
Yeah, that's a different day. That's usually sponsored by the school.
Yeah.
So snowmobile, I'll look at that one. It's a good question. It hasn't come up in a while. Moving on, school safety patrols. I think generally what we were looking at there was we just changed a few language pieces in there, got rid of the word obviously, thought that was just an extra word. And then that we work with the police department with our safety patrols and the administration, not with parent volunteers. And the next one is student suicide prevention and intervention. This is with regards to, obviously it's pretty self-stated. And looking at adopting the PRG version of this. Again, we have reviewed this from our student services perspective. And are comfortable with what the PRG version is bringing forth. Right, student scholarships and awards. And we have a few of these here. We have 460, which is just our general policy with regards to our scholarship programs. And then the two rules are really ones that are driven and dictated by state law. These are the academic excellence scholarships for the 4-year schools and the 2-year
But
schools.
we pulled those.
We
Chip
did pull
wasn't
this.
ready for those.
You're not ready for those?
No.
Okay, thank you. You pulling all the scholarship ones?
No, we're keeping the student scholarship 460 in there.
Our two state programs.
You're not ready for those?
Take back in the shop.
All right, let's just pull the whole 460 series.
Oh,
That way I'm not splitting them up.
got it.
So we'll pull the 460s. So those won't go to the board. Thank you. The next one is 650.
Well,
Is that
it
right?
was 470,
Yeah,
but he's remembering.
no, he's kicking it to the 600s. Is that what he's doing? All right.
Pulling this one?
No, it's just getting renumbered. This is with regards to student fees and then a student.
Steve wanted to keep
Keep his.
his language. He edited it a little bit, but he's willing to renumber.
Oh, all right. That's what it is. Thank you. So there is a PRG version as Steve reviewed our student fee piece. He felt that our current policy met our needs better than what the PRG version did. He also felt, and then one of the things that Barry Forbes has recommended, and occasionally he'll find a policy within our book that we have coded in one area, but he feels it's better coded in another. So the 600s are like the school finance side. So that's kind of where the student fees would fall. So with that, the recommendation here then would be to keep our current policy with the modification in the yellow that Steve made. Four eighty is this is student volunteers. This is with regards to kids who are volunteering at different places within our district. As we reviewed that, we made just a few changes, changed guidance counselor to school counselor, and then also added the or with the counselor or principal. And we didn't think we needed the specifics of the examples of where they could be volunteering because that we have kids volunteering across our district in a lot of different ways. Keep that one. And then the last set we have here is with regards to children of divorced and separated parents. So 491. And then also the associated rule. And this is one that we have reviewed again to see, we work with these policies frequently. And we have reviewed it to make sure that it's in line with what our practice is and the direction that we feel is most productive in working in those situations. In most cases, what it really comes down to is making sure that you have we work very closely with parents to get the most current order. And then trying to work with them to implement that. And in the absence of some language in some of those orders, this helps us with regards to how we can navigate through parent-teacher conferences, communication, sharing of materials, etc. .492 is the last one, which is student photographs. And this is with regards to school photos. And I think the only thing we changed was this used to be managed by a building principal. Now it's really managed by Annie Blackburn. So it just says district administrator or designee, and I've designated gives me the opportunity to give it to, who's gonna lead that work. So Annie does that for us as a district right now. Those are all the policies. There's a lot of them for this month, but there's, I think, a number of them that are tied to some of the state law pieces and health area, which they've done a nice job reviewing.
How do you control? Like there's a major event and one kid doesn't want, or his parents don't want that kid's photograph. And like in a sense,
Oh, that's a different form. That's actually in the registration form that they're actually able to say, do you want your child's image or likeness shared? We usually keep, those are fairly minimal, but we do keep all the teachers know which kids can be on, can be like shared on social media, etc. So that's an opt-in or opt-out piece on the registration every year. There's not very many of them, but we are careful when we get into classrooms that we're asking the teacher, do you have any kids that are on the milk photography list? So for sometimes for like social media, when Annie's got pictures, she's just got to make sure, especially if it's a whole class, to make sure before she posts it. Kind of the best we're able to do. There's not a lot of things, but there's certainly a few.
so like if there's a school assembly and a picture is snapped and it's posted, you have to look at everyone's.
If it's a school, if it's something that we're controlling, if it's at a public event, that's different. I mean, I don't control the newspaper, but I do control if I'm taking a picture in my classroom. Right.
You know, or groundbreaking, you got all those kids there.
Yeah, you just, if you take it where it's the whole group, it's not, you're not singling the kids out. Sometimes we've had kids that have just, you've moved them or dropped them, put them on the edge. So there's different methods to do that, or you just be careful you don't post those photos. Or you're taking kind of a picture of like a whole mass of kids where you really aren't identifying any individual kids. Definitely something we're aware of and probably falls pretty specifically in Annie's work with a lot of the things that she manages. But that's a very common question when we go into schools and having pictures, or if you have like a guest speaker and there's kids participating in pictures, making sure that we're cautious with those.
So when they are, if it is a bigger, to Jack's question then, and maybe the picture is only 10 kids and one of those kids actually did have a form filled out, then you have to go on blur. You have the
Sometimes,
kids.
yeah, it's. Sometimes those are kind of like your. I think we try to use it as Ted, as if it's a group of kids that you're gonna be able to identify who all the kids are. Then we're making sure we're diligent about it. If it's a picture of 300 kids out on the
Right.
field, I'm not worried about it. So it's like the groundbreaking where you've got them all. You got 300 kids or 600 kids spread out across, and there's a picture of the sea of kids. We're not necessarily concerned with that, but if they're holding a shovel during the groundbreaking, we've got to be cautious. Not a lot of kids, but there are certainly some in every school.
I'll take them. Do you have any other questions about it?
No, I think it's good.
I'll take a motion to,
Motion to adjourn.
no,
No.
can't do that.
Yeah.
Approve.
Motion.
Oh, motion to approve.
As
Second.
noted on this version.
As presented.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Now we can, future meetings, I think we have established, or we will establish with the board.
Yeah, we will. Just gotta get caught up a little bit here. We have our
Uh,
next, so this is actually the end of the 400. You've made it.
Except a couple that were pulled.
Yeah, there's a few that are pulled. Yeah, there's a few that have been pulled that we'll come back with, and then there's. Over the last couple series, we saw some that were related to Title IX, which is getting reconstituted at the federal level. Once that gets clarified, then we'll go back and pick up all of those. So those are the ones that are really outstanding, and Rebecca's been doing a good job of making sure we are tracking which ones we need to come back.
And I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Randy.
You bet. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your patience.
And there are donuts up here. Dessert.
Yeah.